Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a tag-along discussion. I'm your host, Bilal Khan, and today we have special guest, Saad Tasleem. Not so subtle advertising right here. Saad Tasleem collection. Well, let's talk about Saad Tasleem collection. What do you got going on here?
Well, this is something that I want to do actually for a long time.
Okay.
Is come out with... Okay, let me be honest.
Yeah.
Not so much a clothing line. What I wanted to do for a long time is make my own clothes.
Okay.
One of the things that...
Like your own fashion for yourself kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I'd rather just make my own stuff. It started in Medina because you can go there and get like a thobe made to your specifications. You
like
can add stuff. Yeah, tailor-made, and it's cheap.
Is that common there? Like for
it's very common.
Okay.
Because it's so cheap. Like compared to like a ready-made off-the-shelf thobe, it's like a $10, $15 difference. So I've always
dollars, not like
dollars. I did the math for the exchange rate, whatever.
Gotcha.
But approximately. So when I was in Medina, I always just got my own stuff made, and then coming back to the States and shopping and buying stuff. One of the problems that I always had is that if I'm wearing a shirt, say I go to like H&M or wherever, I buy that shirt. I know someone in the audience is probably wearing the same shirt, right? Someone's got that same shirt or whatever.
For you to have like that unique factors, like
exactly. And look, I understand like it's a lot of it has to do with how you put it together, and that's cool as well. Yeah. But to make my own stuff the way I want it to be, that's something that I always wanted to do. So it was like the clothing line is kind of an extension of that. Like if I'm doing it for myself, why not share it with a certain amount of people? And that's why.
Is that why you come out with a limited?
So it's exclusive.
It's a collection, right?
It's collection. It's very limited.
Yeah.
This coming collection, which is coming soon, inshallah. It's on the way. It's 4 to 5 pieces, 4 to 5 designs. We haven't settled on the last one yet. And 100 pieces
of each. Gotcha.
And
so it's like 400 or 500 pieces.
Yeah. Okay. And that's it.
And that's it. Once it's done, it's sold. It's gone. It's done.
It's gone. And you will never see that same piece being done by us ever again. Like next season, we're going to do new designs.
Gotcha.
We're moving on. Like I'm sure people will copy like our designs and stuff.
Right.
But we don't care because we're done. That's like, it's done. We've made it.
But that's kind of, that's kind of how the fashion industry is.
Yeah.
Right. Like they always come out with a season of clothes, the same brand or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but it's just like, let me ask you this: what is it that makes some of the stuff that you're making? What's unique about it?
Well, first of all, it comes from my sense of style.
Okay.
Fashion is a word that I don't.
Subjective.
It's very subjective. I actually don't like the word fashion. For me, what I was telling you earlier, was what's stylish is what you feel the best in.
The first edition of your Saad Tasleem collection, was it the one from Malaysia?
Yeah, so people thought so what happened was I want to do like a soft launch, right? Just to get the idea out there that I'm coming out with a clothing line, just to get people used to the idea, because I get it, like public speaker or sheikh, whatever, and like a fashion line, it's like it's just weird, right?
People don't really I don't know how many people know this, but I know you mentioned it, but like you've got a design background.
Yeah, I do. I have a design and art background. So yeah, it's for me, it's completely natural.
And that's one of the reasons we jive well. It's like, whatever. No, but in all seriousness, honestly, there's very few instructors that I can explain a concept to design wise, advertising wise, communication wise, and you get it. Right. Yeah. And we can just get right into the crux of the content of what needs to be displayed. Whereas other people, it's just like, no, I want it like this. I want it like that. It's like, what are you talking about? That doesn't even make any sense.
I call it client talk.
Yeah.
Like make it pop. Make it,
What does that mean? Exactly. What's the objective you're trying to accomplish? Yeah. Like you just wanted to pop? Or it's just like, but like having, and I would assume that a big portion of that design background lent itself into the fashion. Definitely. It definitely had it. Like I said, for me, it's completely natural. It's a natural thing to do. But I get that for people who don't know me, that don't understand my design background, like it seems weird. So just to get that idea out there, I did like a soft launch, which was we printed some shirts and just had like a little design on a t-shirt. Just, we sold like a certain amount at they were at Ilmfest, limited amount, sold amount. So people thought we're a t-shirt company. Oh, okay. And I'm like, no. We're not a t-shirt company. There's a lot of t-shirt companies out there. Yeah. The t-shirt market is actually super saturated. Yeah. Like everyone's doing t-shirt. We're not doing t-shirts. It's so easy to make a t-shirt design. It's like you get whatever t-shirts, unless your t-shirt is like, one thing that I haven't seen from t-shirt companies, if people actually use that dry fit material, the polyester blend.
So there's like a very small percent of the population that's interested in that. People like you, and then that's it.
No, but it fits so well. It looks good. And you can go through hundreds of washes and it still doesn't fade. And it's like, and the thing is, as long as it looks normal, it doesn't look like as if it's active wear, right? Yeah. Like it's something that you could wear to your normal everyday stuff. Yeah. But it's still like fashionable.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying I'm never going to do a t-shirt. Mm-hmm. Actually, who knows? Maybe in like a summer collection, we might add a t-shirt, but it's what you said. It's about how you do it, right? Yeah. It's about the fabric. It's about the feel. It's also about the cut. It's about what you put on there. So yeah, you're right. You can do cool stuff with it, but I just want to be like, we're not a t-shirt line.
Gotcha. Is that why you haven't reproduced another t-shirt?
Yeah, we're not doing those t-shirts anymore. Gotcha. Like I said, if we do a t-shirt, it's going to be...
It's a cool design, man. Just like over the shoulder.
Yeah. Sheikh Kamal was rocking it, man. Yeah. He looks good in it.
Yeah, but no more of that.
People wanted those, and I was considering doing another run, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do it because I don't...
I like that principle. It's like, look, we're done.
It also keeps it interesting for me. Mm-hmm. And, I have a designer who works with me as well. He's actually a fashion designer. But it keeps things interesting for us as well because we don't want to just do the same stuff over and again. We have to challenge ourselves every 6 months or every year to come out with new, fresh designs. Yeah. So,
what has been the challenge thus far with the next run? Like you talk about, it's going to be soon, but I would assume that there's been whatever delays.
There have been delays. I mean, there's this. Obviously, we've been talking about this for a long time. Our Instagram page is up. Yeah. We have a Facebook page. Check us out, by the way. We're on Instagram, Saad Tasleem Collection. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've been talking about it for a while. So one of the big challenges was having our designs come out exactly the way we wanted it. Okay. So for me, like I said, this is personal for me. Like I'm going to be wearing these clothes. So like things have to look a certain way. Okay. And they have to feel a certain way. When you screen print something onto a fabric, it's going to feel different. Yeah. It's going to look different in certain lights as opposed to maybe like digital printing. Okay. So just that little detail, make sure that looks right. Make sure it looks the way I wanted it to look. Okay. And so it's
more of a piece of art to you than it is.
It definitely. Okay. I mean, this is even like me, my designer as well, Maureen. For both of us, he's very passionate about it as well. For me, it's the process of creating everything. Like that's the fun part for me. Yeah. Everything else is like that's why I'm like I need somebody else to handle like the business side of it because first of all, I just don't have time for that. Yeah. Second of all, it's completely boring to me. Like I'm not interested in that. Like I'm interested in just like the process. Creating.
Gotcha. There was it's interesting because there was one of the guys that I really admire. His name is Evan Mountain Chang. Okay. Right. This guy created dress shoes, but the way he went about it is that he actually he got involved like barefoot running and powerlifting and all that. But he's an accountant, so when he actually went back to, I think he took some time off, went back to work. Got back in his dress shoes. It's like, I can't do this anymore. And he tried slicing the heel off, and it just completely ruined his shoe. It's like, you know what? I need to make my own shoe, right? And he just solving his own problem. And then even just him having gone through the renditions and just the designs, but like from the outside, it looks like a genuine black cap-toe dress shoe. Recently, just came out with oxblood color black cap-toe red shoe, but like following his process. The spacing between the stitching, the way that the shine comes out, after time through with the patina, just all of those details.
It's about the details. And that's the other thing, right? Because we're doing a limited amount, and I'll just be honest with you, it's going to be a little pricey. Mm-hmm. And I understand
it's designer clothing.
Yeah. So, and I understand that most people are not going to really. I don't know. Maybe they won't appreciate those little details, but some people will. Yeah. Like the stitching and this and that, like the small, subtle things that we did. It's for the people who will appreciate that. Yeah. So that's why that's what it's for.
I mean, it's for a limited market type of people, and so. Yeah. But the question that comes into my mind is, okay, you have a particular cut and things like that. Yeah. So. And it's something that you're looking at yourself. So is it fair to say somebody with your body type would be the appropriate fit for it? Or
so
how does that
we're
work?
Trying to be as versatile as possible. Okay. Right. I can't guarantee it's going to fit everybody perfectly.
Because my challenge, just to be frank, right? Yeah. Like I can do t-shirts and activewear easy. And I think that's how activewear is designed. Yeah. But if I go and get myself like a decent collar shirt, dude, I have to spend literally an hour and a half at the shopping store trying on every other different kind of shirt. Right. And finally, when one fits, it's hard for me to find another one just like it. And even when it does fit, I still have to tailor it.
Look, I have the same problem. So we did keep that in mind, and we're trying to design the clothes in a way that it will look good on a variety of different body shapes. So we're trying our best to cater to as many people as possible.
Because I remember that, like when I was working in the Retail Association in DC, one of the things that from our own studies and research showcased, one of the reasons people return clothes is because of fit.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I've returned a lot of clothes because of.
So that's,
like I said, it's about how you feel in it, right? Like if you don't feel good in clothing, what's the point? Yeah.
Other than the fact that you have to cover yourself, but
you can do that with like a loincloth, like anything. If it's just about covering, I mean, yeah, you can just...
this is pure function. It's like, well...
You can wear the ihram. I mean, that's, that's very close to what the Prophet would wear sometimes, just 2 pieces of cloth, just one on the bottom, one on the top, you're good.
A lungi and a cloak.
There you go. That's, I mean, that fulfills the requirements.
Yeah. Now, your nickname in Medina was Abu Layth.
Abu Layth.
Okay.
And that came from... I moved to Medina, I had 2 roommates. I was living in the dorms the first year.
Yeah.
And my roommates were like, what's your kunya? I'm like, I don't have a kunya. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're Abu what? I'm like, nothing. I'm like, I'm not married. They're like, you don't have to be married. I'm like, I don't have any kids.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't have to have kids to have a kunya. I'm like, well, I don't have a kunya. They're like, can we give you a kunya? And I'm like, sure, go at it. Like, let's see what you come up with. And literally, I think it was like the next day, they come up to me and they're like, you're Abu Layth.
Okay.
And I'm like, and this is I've just gotten to Medina. I haven't studied a lot of Islam yet. And I'm like, okay, I guess, like, why? And they're like, well, there's a famous imam. His name was Imam Al-Layth ibn Sa'd. Al-Layth, the son of Sa'd. And they're like, he's like famous faqih, famous muhaddith, scholar of fiqh and hadith. And so your son will be Al-Layth ibn Sa'd. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So then, I started using it. People call me like Abu Layth, Abu Layth. I never thought much of it until I started studying. We started studying fiqh and jurisprudence. Yeah. And then I remember clearly sitting in class, we would take the opinions of the 4 imams. And very often, we would also take the opinion of Imam Al-Layth, right? We would say, Imam Abu Hanifa said this. Imam Malik said this. This was there. And then Imam Al-Layth said this.
When did he live? Like, what was his time period?
He was early on. To the point where if
8th century?
If today, I believe he was.
During Imam Malik's time?
I believe he's contemporary, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on this. I'm horrible with dates.
Okay.
I believe he's around the time of Imam Malik, if I'm not mistaken.
Got it. Do you know where? Like, what region?
I don't recall. I want to say Egypt area. Okay. For some reason, that's ringing a bell.
Gotcha.
But Allah'alam. I don't recall exactly.
The thing is, why isn't Imam Al-Layth as popular?
Okay, so that was my question.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, wait. Like, first of all, why are we taking his opinion?
Okay.
In these matters, like, who is he? And second of all, like, why isn't there? If we're mentioning him alongside Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Ahmed, and so on. Why isn't there a Laythi madhab? So, I found out later that if his works were preserved till today, then we would it's very possible that we could have a 5th madhab, which is the Laythi madhab.
Okay.
But it's simply...
But what about
look, there's different reasons why madhab...
Because the proliferation of either the adoption of those laws
it can be adopted
by the government.
Exactly. It can be adopted by the state. The students preserve it and so on. There's many different reasons.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, right, it seems that not enough of his opinions were preserved to codify it into a madhab.
Okay.
But there's quite a bit of his opinions that are available.
Now, because from what I've understood, I only learned about the Laythi after talking to you, right? And but in my mind, if there was a 5th madhab, it would be the Lahiri madhab. Right. So the question that comes up is, what's the difference between the 2 of them? Not in terms of, because I know Lahidis are very literalist and all that.
So some people would consider the Lahiri madhab considered a madhab.
Okay.
Right.
And it was only revived because of Ibn Hazm, which was much later. But I guess
so in Medina we would take the opinion of the 4 imams.
Yeah.
We would take Imam Al-Layth sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes we would even take the Lahiri opinion.
Okay.
So when you study comparative fiqh, depending on where you study, but you take the Lahiri opinion as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it just depends on who's doing the teaching.
Exactly. And comparative fiqh, not to get technical or whatever, but comparative fiqh is something that is supposed to be an advanced subject.
Okay.
Like the way it was done.
You need to know the fiqh to compare it.
Exactly. You need to understand the fiqh to compare it.
Yeah.
Right? And the problem is sometimes people jump to comparative fiqh
before they even know what the rules are.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? So before they even understand the issues.
Yeah.
So this is why classically the way it was done was you would study a madhab.
Yeah.
You would start with the basics of the madhab. You would actually start with just the opinion, the main opinion. You wouldn't even take evidences and all that kind of stuff.
Just take the codified content.
Yeah, so this is halal, this is haram, that you do this in this way. Just the rules and whatever. That's all you have.
Yeah.
And then the next step would be something like, okay, here's one evidence.
Okay.
Right? And then you add more evidences to it. And then you know, for example, in the Hanbali madhab, you take khilaf, difference opinion inside the madhab. Because sometimes there's differences inside the madhab.
Yeah.
And then you go through all of that process, and now you've become like a master, or you're good at your madhab. You understand your madhab.
Yeah.
You understand the issues.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, then you move on to comparative fiqh.
Okay.
Right. So it's that process that person technically should go through.
And that's more like a master's degree plus, right?
Exactly. I mean, just like you study anything else, you don't start with the advanced topics. Right. You start with the basic. You start with defining the terms. Yeah. Right. Understanding the issues.
At what point did you really decide yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to name my son Laith.
When I started to kind of learn more about Imam al-Layth, and when his name would come up quite often, it was around that time that I was like, yeah, it's cool. I like it. And then linguistic, what it means. It's like a lion or like a cub.
Lion cub, yeah. How many different versions or different words they have for a lion in the language?
In Arabic, yeah.
It's interesting. But why is that?
Lions are...
Why lions?
Because,
why not tigers?
Because... it's all in the family, right? There's cats and lions and tigers and falcons, cheetahs and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's not but is it specifically a lion cub or just a cub cat family?
No, it's a lion cub.
Okay.
It's not a cat. It's not a little cat.
It's like it's a Persian kitten.
No, it's not a kitten. But yeah, my wife now is like, maybe we shouldn't have named him that, because he's like, he's getting closer to terrible twos or whatever. So
yeah.
All over the place. She's like, is that his name coming to light?
I wonder how often do children really embody the characteristic of the name that they're given?
Arabs back in the day would really believe that.
Okay.
Right? They would really believe that if I name my son something, they will, or my daughter, they will really embody that name. For example, there's a name which I heard when I was studying in Medina. I thought was so weird.
Yeah.
The name is Mut'ib.
Mut'ib, okay.
Mut'ib comes from ta'ib, which is like tired, to be tired. Mut'ib is the one who makes other people tired, right? So if you're annoyed with someone, or even as your child, right, you're into Mut'ib, you're tiring me, you tire me out.
So exhausting,
right? And I'm like, why would you name your son Mut'ib?
Yeah,
but
in the context of tribalism and war and things
exactly.
Like that, right?
So they would say, huwa mut'ib li'aduwina. He's tired. He will tire out our enemies.
Okay.
Right. Tribal warfare and all that kind of stuff. So they would, or sa'ab. Sa'ab means difficult.
Okay.
Right. Why would you name your son difficult? Right. But it's difficult for the people who will go against us.
It's like harb. Why would you name your son?
Yeah, harb. Yeah, exactly. The tribe, the Harbi tribe. Right.
The funny thing is, if somebody's named Harb, it'd be like Herb.
And that's the other thing. The crazy thing about the name Layth, Desis, right, have a hard time with the name, because there's a tha in it, right?
Yeah.
So there's no tha in Urdu.
Yeah, there's.
There's a tha, but it's pronounced sa.
Okay. Yeah. Fair
right?
Enough. Yeah. Lace. Well, no. Wait.
No, Uthman is
Usman. Okay.
Usman.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So people are confused. They're like lace. They're like lace. So it's strange to me, but in the American culture, for Americans, right, or people who speak English, it's perfect. His first doctor's appointment, the nurse comes out and she's like, Saad Tasleem, and I'm like, what? Perfect pronunciation.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that until after I named my son.
Enunciation of the letters is very prevalent.
Yeah,
and maybe that's something people need to keep in mind. Is if you're gonna name your kid in an American context, maybe you want to keep in mind how that's going to sound.
Yeah, I mean, look, me personally, I'm in two minds about this issue. On one hand, I think we need to preserve our culture.
Yeah, we
need to preserve the Arab names, Arabic names, or Persian names, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But there's so many cool, for example, there's one, I think a great name for a daughter is Lanakea.
Okay.
It means boundless heaven in Hawaiian.
Okay.
And it is, in fact, this name that they gave to our galaxy's supercluster when they measured all the stars. But it's an amazing name.
Okay. So, yeah, for a name like that, I would just be just need to make sure there's no religious connotation.
Okay.
Right? Because we can't use names that have religious meanings non-Islamic religion.
Yeah.
But in general, yeah, you can name, as long as the name is, doesn't have a negative meaning. It does not related to like someone else's, a different religion. Then yeah, you can name your son John or Peter or whatever. Yeah. No, my point is like, it doesn't matter. But look, like I said,
John, like might as well go Yahya.
But that's the thing, right? Like people are gonna have Yahya, right? Okay. People are gonna have a hard time with that. Well, John.
I think my problem is people who are actually called Yahya, who call themselves Yahya.
I mean, sometimes look, a kid goes to school, like they grow up with the name Yahya, and like they hear that name in elementary and then middle, and then everybody's always called me Yahya, so he's like, okay, I'm Yahya, whatever, it's fine, right? But like I said, I'm in two minds about this. On one, so part of me is like, no, we should keep naming those names. People will learn. Like we've learned the name Jose, right? Okay. We get it,
yeah,
right?
But what else could it have been?
My point is, they could have, whatever. They could have been a name that is more common to like white people or something.
Joe,
right? Whatever.
Okay.
So we know that name now.
Yeah.
So if we hold on to that part of our culture, maybe the next generation, they're like, yo, Abdullah. Yeah, Abdullah is a common name.
And your life as an instructor. And first question that comes to mind is, what are some things that you've learned?
What are some epiphanies that I've had?
Or that, yeah, sure.
No, honestly, I've learned a lot, and I would say I've actually, I don't want to say changed a lot, but
your approach might have changed.
Yeah.
I mean, I just remember from the first time I met you, just the kind of content that we were trying to record. It's like, dude, stop giving a lecture. We're doing a social media video that's 2 minutes long. Come on, like, relax.
So one of the big things I would say is exactly that. I've learned the difference between what I call the ideal and what's real.
Okay.
Right.
That rhymes.
Some people are idealists. Right. And I think there's a place for that. Mm-hmm. Like this is the ideal version of a Muslim. Right. And then there's people who are realists. Like this in the real world, this is what a Muslim
interact with people.
Yeah. This is what a religious or practicing Muslim looks like.
Yeah.
And to take the approach for me of, yes, we talk about the ideal, but we don't smash people on the head who are not exactly upon the ideal all the time.
Right. I mean, like somebody might say the ideal and like, for example, I'm just thinking like in Salah, right? You want to pray your fard, you want to play your sunnah, you want to play nawafil, but it's very, very difficult to do that, realistically speaking.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, I would assume it's kind of similar in this regard beyond worship.
Yeah. It's almost every aspect of Islam. And just one of the things that has really like come to the forefront for me is the fact that, and I often talk about this, like categorizing people. I hate it now. Like I can't stand it. You know, even like good Muslim, bad Muslim, like, practicing Muslim, non-practicing Muslim, whatever. I think that's so limiting. And it actually hurts us because we are defining what we do for ourselves. It's terrible because we've like put ourselves in this category.
We've limited our own capacity and potential just by doing that.
Yeah. And when we do it to others, we don't believe in their potential.
Yeah.
So I'm like, for me now, we're all on this scale, right? We're on, this gradient. We're all trying to move towards becoming a good Muslim. Yeah. We're all on that path somewhere. Some people are here, some people there, some people are farther along, but we're all like, we have the same goal.
Yeah.
Right? And that kind of changes your approach when you're giving da'wah, when you're teaching people. I've learned to have high expectations from people.
Have people surprised you?
People have surprised me.
Yeah.
People have surprised me, and it's not always like what they do. It's their desire to be better.
Okay.
Right. So it's very, very easy to take a negative approach towards people and their Islam and their practicing of Islam. Like, oh, nobody prays 5 times a day. And, all these Muslims are doing this and they're doing that and nobody practices Islam. But that's one way to approach it.
Yeah.
Right. And you can get really bogged down and you can become really negative and just critical of everyone and everything.
Yeah.
And that's the dark path. Like I see that. And I've seen people have gone down that path, and that's their da'wah. Their da'wah is just, everyone's going to hell. Everyone's a horrible Muslim. Every person is a deviant. Everyone is just horrible. Everyone's wrong, and it's not like if that's your message, you're not going to inspire a whole lot of people.
No, it's interesting. One of the companies I worked at the first job I had when I was in DC, it was a local nonprofit geared towards educating middle school students, right? And one of the things that they would always drill, not only to the staff and employees and their volunteers, but as well as the students themselves. It's like, we here have a culture of high expectations. I don't care what society has told you, because we're dealing with kids in urban and at-risk communities, right? They're probably told that you're no good, you're not going to amount to anything, kind of stuff. Like, look, forget all that. We have a culture of high expectations here. Yeah. We expect you to show up. We expect you to put in the hard work. We expect you to succeed, right? And you can see these kids transform.
Yeah. Not only expect, but like just believe in people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm always like, there's a difference between trying to guilt people into becoming a better Muslim and inspiring people to become a better Muslim.
What do you mean by guilt versus inspire?
Like, for example, guilting someone is you're bad, you're horrible, this and that, you're a terrible Muslim, you're going to hell. Like, that's
how's
it.
That guilting? That's just like you're just berating.
That's them. Like, yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Okay. Right? As opposed to, hey, listen, you have a lot of potential. Yeah. Right? And there's goodness in you.
I mean, granted, there might be some things that could improve, but like, look, we're not focusing on that. Let's focus on what you can do good.
Exactly. Yeah. And I believe in people's potential for good. And that has changed the way I talk to people and the way I give da'wah. And positivity for me, and once again, it sounds cliche, but positivity works. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's far more helpful. You can make far more progress with that than, the
just like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that doesn't work. Maybe in the previous generation, right? Maybe. People could be like, they could force their kids to pray. They could force their kids to fast and force their kids.
Again, the culture and the environment that they grew up in was vastly different from what we are now.
Exactly.
I mean, here people have choices. Yeah. Right.
And look, back in the day, people around you, you lived in a certain culture, certain environment. Everyone was like kind of doing the same thing. Now you're living in a very diverse environment, different ideas, different ways of life, you're just bombarded with so much. Yeah. So guilting, condemning people, criticizing people is not effective. No matter, I know some people believe like that's their life, right? That's how they give da'wah.
Fair enough.
But I think in the long run,
did you feel that you were kind of doing that initially?
I wouldn't say that I was doing that initially.
Okay.
But I saw a lot of that. Okay. Right. So when I came back,
so you just made a conscious decision. I'm not going to do that.
So one of the things that, alhamdulillah, like I got some really good advice when I came back, and that was to take things slow. Okay. Right. So I started teaching for Al-Maghrib, picked certain topics, and I kind of eased my way in. Okay. Because for me, it was like, I hadn't lost touch. Like I don't want to say I lost touch with America when I was studying in Medina.
Right. Hey, but you were out of it for like 7 years, right?
Yeah, like I would come home in the summertime and stuff. So, but it's still not the same as being like living there throughout the year, seeing the problems that people are going through. So I made a conscious decision to ease my way in. Okay. And one of the things that I've always held on to from the very beginning is to be extremely cautious and careful before giving your opinion on a matter. Okay. Right. Get all the information, take your time. No one's going to blame you for saying, I don't know. Yeah. Right. Or go ask somebody else.
But they will come down on you if you were wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So there's a lot of things that I didn't speak about in the beginning because I was like, let me just get the lay of the land and all that. And, I slowly moved my way into being a little bit more upfront about certain things, talking about certain things. And I'm really glad I did that. Mm-hmm. I'm grateful for it now, 4 years later. Fair enough. I kind of knew this, but it became even more real for me. This is a personal thing. What people don't realize is the superstar sheikh, superstar da'i, whatever, celebrity sheikh, that life is...
exhausting?
It's really tiring, man. It is exhausting.
You spend most of your time there.
No, and not even that. Yeah. Not even that. It's very glamorous from the outside. Like when you look in upon it, right? Sometimes I look at my life, I look at what people see from my life, right? If you go to my Instagram page, you see all these like pictures of places that I go to. Yeah. You look at my Snapchat, right? I only snap when I'm traveling.
And you snap because it might be relevant to your audience.
Exactly. Interesting. So it's very easy to look at that and be like, oh man.
That's all he's doing.
That's such amazing. Like I wish I could, that sounds, all these people listen to you and this and that, whatever. That's not the reality. It's a very, very tiring life to the point like multiple times I'm
just looking at it from like the reality of how you're on stage maybe in a weekend, right? Maybe 10 hours?
I mean, it depends on, if it's an Al-Maghrib seminar.
Yeah. So 10 hours in terms of in relation to a day might be less than a day, right? Yeah. But you're gone from like Thursday to like Monday.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll give you
and recovery,
dude. I'll give you a behind the scenes, right? Okay, so I always do that. I told him, I said, this is way too close to me. I'm gonna knock it over.
Hello.
So behind the scenes, right? Let's say I'm teaching within the US, which I don't always teach within the US. Within the US, most cases I leave Thursday at some point, right? So Thursday's gone.
Yeah.
Get there Thursday night, depending how far it is, whatever. Next day, give the Jum'ah khutbah.
Yeah.
And then a couple hours later, there's the opening night. And then there's Saturday, Sunday teach. And then Monday morning, I fly back. Monday's gone. Yeah. So now we're looking at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm left with...
That's a 5-day work week, folks.
I'm left with Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
But Tuesday,
Wednesday.
But Tuesday, I'm like exhausted, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, I'm recovering from standing for like whatever, like 20 hours or something. And the travel and all that kind of stuff, let alone if I have to travel overseas, sometimes I'll leave on a Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah. Malaysia. It's like 24 hours.
Malaysia is just another story. It's just like, there's nothing left of your week. But, I mean, I can go on and on. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining.
No, but there's I mean, the time that you spend in travel and for work, it's similar to, it's just the days are shifted, right? For somebody who's working 9 to 5, has an hour commute each way. Like they get home, like they really have no more than maybe an hour for themselves each day. Yeah. And then finally they spend Saturday recovering, Friday night partying, Saturday recovering, Sunday dreading that they got to go back to work on Monday. Yeah. It's a similar scenario, except that your weekend is Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah,
but you're doing good work.
Alhamdulillah. Look, I'm very glad for the opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the work that I'm doing. Yeah. Like I said though, it's a complete, like when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it, it's very, there are days where I just dread just leaving. Like especially after my son was born.
I can imagine, yeah.
I've, don't tell anybody I told you this. I've at multiple times considered just like retiring.
Okay.
People are like, what? It's been 4 years. Like, how you can't, like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like, how can, I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I'm not cool with spending a lot of time away from my son. I don't want to fall into that typical, maybe not so typical, but, perception that people have of a da'i, of a scholar, teacher, whatever, who gives da'wah to the whole world, teaches the whole world.
But is away from family.
And their family gets nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that to my son. I don't want to do that to my family. Yeah. So this last year and a half, 2 years has been kind of a balancing act. I've actually cut down on a lot of my travel. I accept a lot less invitations now. My Al-Maghrib classes have cut down because I'm trying to find that balance. Yeah. And it's not easy.
No doubt. What have you noticed about the different communities? Like, maybe you take it generally first and then kind of zero in. But like, I would assume that like in the U.S. is a pretty big country, right? You'll find differences in culture throughout. Canada is a different country. UK is a different country. Yeah. You've been to Australia for a class?
I have.
So that's another country. You got Malaysia. Yeah. So like, kind of like point out some of the things that you've noticed.
Well, the first thing that I noticed is, contrary to that, to what you're saying, there's a lot of similarities.
Okay.
Like teaching in, I don't know, Chicago, and then like flying across the world, teaching in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. There are a lot of similarities. Like I don't change a lot of the way I talk or the things that I say, because a lot of references
Chicago.
There you go. A lot of the references that I would make in America, people in Malaysia are going to get them.
Really?
Right? In Australia, in the UK. And when I first started traveling overseas, I would find myself like pausing and be like, do you guys get that joke? Like, do you get that? And everyone's like, yeah, we get it. Right? Especially in the UK, they're like, okay, listen, we understand.
Like we speak English.
It's like, no, it's like some of like the terms that we use here, whatever. I'd be like, oh, this is a different, no, but they've heard it because of TV and the internet and movies and all that kind of stuff.
You know, sometimes here, like Americans and even Canadians, they'll say something like, oh man, that pissed me off. Right? British people consider that cussing.
Yeah, I don't use that word.
Oh.
So my rule is anything that is considered profanity or cursing in the States or in the UK, I stay away from both.
Okay.
Just because it's hard to switch for me to to be like, okay, I got to turn these words off since I'm going to the UK or like I'm back in the States. So my rule is like anything that would be considered.
Keep it G all the way.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't use that word.
That was a hard lesson for me. The word pants, right? For us, pants are pants.
For them,
right?
it's underpants.
For them, it's like underwear.
Yeah.
So I was in class one day in the UK, first time, I think like first or second time teaching in the UK. Yeah. I was giving some example, and I was talking about, some people talk about, guys wearing pants and something like that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, as y'all can I'm like turning to the audience. I'm like, as y'all can clearly see, I'm wearing pants. And the room just bust out laughing. And I'm standing there like I'm just confused. And I'm looking behind me. I'm like, did something happen? Like, whatever. And then like in their laughter, like it was like the Amir of the Qabila, he gets up, he's like, shit, over here. I'm like, oh man.
Like, and your face goes red.
Like, what are you gonna do?
Okay. What are your top 3 favorite things across the world?
Across the world?
So from like your travels, from each of these different communities.
Okay, so I'll give a shout out to Malaysia. Malaysians in general, man, they're just like really chill, warm, welcoming. I think
chill is like doesn't even finish describing how laid back.
It's just a welcoming environment, right? Yeah. You come to the States. There's a lot of baggage that is attached to Islam.
Okay.
Right. In terms of you say the word Muslim or Islam, or
people want to disassociate.
Yeah, that, or they will try to put you in a category. Or they're like, there's a lot associated with it. You go to Muslim countries. Islam is very politicized sometimes. Islam is used for political gain, for this agenda or that agenda. And, there's so much,
is that the case
practicing
Malaysia?
Muslim, you say you come off as a practicing Muslim, people make like 20 judgments about you.
Okay.
Malaysia, I'm sure it's there, but I didn't see it.
Okay. Right? It's just part of the culture.
You can be a good Muslim and just be chill and everyone's cool. And it's like, all right, that's fine.
Okay.
No one thinks you're a terrorist. No one's like, oh, you're Wahhabi. No one thinks you're this or that, like Sufi. Like I'm sure it's there. Okay. Right? It's everywhere. But
it's not prevalent.
It's not prevalent. And it's just that relaxed environment is so refreshing for me.
I remember I noticed that last year when I went. It was just like, I feel like I'm here in the USA, but okay, everybody's Southeast Pacific looking, but it's just everybody's Muslim and they're just so like cool. Yeah.
And one of the things that I saw in Malaysia is, it's a Muslim country. There's a lot of Muslims there, majority Muslim, I believe. Someone who doesn't practice Islam, like they don't consider themselves a practicing Muslim, however you're going to define that. Yeah. And they see somebody who's religious, they may not be religious themselves, but they'll look at a religious person and be like, I respect that. Yeah. Like, more power to you. They see it as admirable. Yeah. Okay. It's like, okay, I'm glad you're able to do that. Mm-hmm. One day, inshallah. Right? Yeah. Which is refreshing. Yeah. Go to some other places. Like, I don't want to call out particular parts of the world. Excuse me. But sometimes people are really judgmental, man. Okay. Like, they want to figure you out. Where are you from? What's your stance on this? What do you stand? Are you this type of Muslim? Are you that type of Muslim?
But I also get the feeling that I've never been to the UK, but except, in airport when traveling, but I get the impression that UK is also kind of like very split between North and South. Just from the people that I've met.
Geographically?
Yeah, well, like this culture of like somebody from London versus somebody from like Scotland.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say. It wasn't that prevalent that I really saw a big difference culturally.
Maybe it's because of the fact that somebody from London, it's harder to understand them than somebody from like from like Scotland, or maybe because I just like this.
For me, it's the opposite. Oh, really? When I taught in Scotland, I literally have to have somebody like translate for me.
What about within the U.S.? Like any favorite spots?
Favorite spots, shout outs. Like I don't really give shout outs, man, because I feel like when you give a shout out, you're leaving out.
Like, okay, don't give a shout out. Just be like, look, I kind of like, this is what I like about this particular community that really stood out.
Okay. And which is a shout out, but okay.
Well, we're redefining it.
We're just redefining it, right? Okay.
So you don't like giving shout outs.
Minnesota.
Okay.
The Somali community is awesome.
Okay. I always hear that. Minnesota, always like Minnesota.
They're just, I don't know, man, very welcoming. A lot of people show up to the class and they're excited about studying Islam, which is great. Another place that's like that is Seattle as well. Okay. Which also has a big Somali community. Okay. Coincidence? I don't know. But it's nice. It's nice going there. I just how excited people are about learning Islam, which is, you don't find it that often anymore. And some of the smaller cities have surprised me when it comes to the volunteers. Like volunteers across the board. Like I have so much respect for volunteers, something that I did not anticipate. When I joined up with Al-Maghrib, I never thought that I would feel so dearly towards volunteers. Yeah. Right? I'm like, I'm sure I'd appreciate them, but like
the amount of work hours,
you have no idea. Like, people have no idea, and there's like I have so much love for the volunteers because, and I don't even see everything that they do. Yeah, just what I see, I'm like, man, they sacrifice so much, and I never anticipated that I'm going to feel that way. But just I can literally as the Brits say, literally, go to any city in the world that has an Al-Maghrib Qabila and talk to the volunteers and be like, feel great. It's like, these people are, I know what they're about. I know they're sacrificing a lot, and it's just, I have this immediate love towards them. So that's something, you know, talk about bleeding purple, right? Being Al-Maghribite or whatever you want to call it. That for me is a integral part of being associated with Al-Maghrib. Okay. I think that's one of the things that has been very encouraging for me to, you know, stay committed to Al-Maghrib, is looking at the volunteers and looking at how much work they put into it. Okay. How can I let them down?
I've always seen cultures, there's two facets to it, right? You've got the aesthetics. The aesthetics being like the food you eat, the clothing you wear, the language you speak, people you're around. But at the same time, there's a deeper aspect to the culture, which has to do with the very values that you hold and how that overlays with the way you do things, right? So let's take, for example, the value of cleanliness. Okay, so in Eastern cultures, cleanliness is demonstrated through taking your shoes off when you enter into somebody's home, right? But in the West, cleanliness, which is also a value here, but is demonstrated through having hand sanitizer, mounted on every other wall so you can clean up your hands. It's just the culture now is how that value has been applied locally. But I'm just wondering how that applies within an Islamic context. Look, because there's a lot of different values, right?
It's actually extremely, like, people overcomplicate the issue of culture. And I know why, because like there's a lot of bad that comes from culture. And there's a lot of bad that gets attributed to Islam because of culture. Okay. Right. So I get it when people are very anti-culture. But Islamically, it's very simple. Take the good, leave the bad. Okay. It's as simple as that. Cleanliness, if there's hand sanitizer, as a Muslim, like, that's good. Yeah. Right? It goes along with the principles and the morals and the ideals and the values of Islam. So I would welcome that. Yeah. Right. So that's what, and if there's something in the culture which is bad, we would leave it. Okay. Right. So it's not all bad, it's not all good. It's in the middle.
There's just so much good and so much bad. Like, how do you navigate?
So that's where it's important to understand your Islamic morals and your principles. Look, there's certain things, for example, that Islam will leave open. Leave it open to your culture as long as it doesn't go against the principles of Islam. Okay. And there's a lot of that.
Like, give me an example.
Like the way you dress. Okay. Right? We have certain principles, certain guidelines, certain conditions that need to be met. Yeah. Once those are met, the rest is up to you. Right? You cannot expose your awrah, for example. You have to cannot have any vulgar messages and things like that. Once those conditions are met, the rest is defined by your culture. Okay. Like, Islam didn't come to say you have to wear thobe, right? I was going to say shalwar qamis. Okay. But right. That's not what Islam said. Islam said it has to be modest, right? And then modest has different aspects to it.
But I guess another question comes, like, modesty is one thing in one culture, another thing in another culture.
But there's an Islamic definition of modesty as well.
Okay, there is. You have, and I think we'll close with this. If you had the choice of teaching whatever you wanted, and you could take your pick, and this is like, I would love to teach this, what would this be?
That's a really difficult one, because I almost do have that with Al-Maghrib. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. There's a lot that I love about Al-Maghrib. Alhamdulillah, a lot. And they didn't pay me to say this, by the way. I'm not getting paid anything
when
right
they
now.
Say that this dude bleeds purple, it's true.
But look, one of the things that I've always loved about Al-Maghrib is the amount of freedom that they give me in terms of choosing topics and choosing what I want to teach, and not only that, the way I want to teach it. Okay. And I think that's the freedom that they allow their instructors to have in terms of, you go to a seminar. One seminar to another seminar, if it's a different instructor, you're gonna have a very different experience depending on the style. And
the only thing that's really consistent is the structure in terms of timings and lunch and things like that. But actual teaching style, what's in the class content,
how it's taught. Yeah, exactly. So I love that about Al-Maghrib. So they have given me the freedom to do that, alhamdulillah. And that's why I think this topic of culture and how do we balance we're in America, we're Americans. How do we balance that culture with Islam? What Islam has to say? And that's why I think that needed to be tackled.
Saad, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Keep the hands away from the mics.
Fair enough. Guys, this episode is only as good as the feedback you guys give and the people that we have on the show and what we can ask them. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll see you soon, man.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Take care. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.